When we talk about why skin ages, you most often hear genes, UV radiation, or smoking. But I'll surprise you. Often, the biggest enemy of our skin might not be found in those things, but on our plate. In this video, I won't be talking about how obesity is a disease and worsens health because we all know that already. I'll focus on how being overweight and obese affects collagen, wrinkles, and the skin. You'll find out how much excess weight is needed to start worsening your skin. Why do people who are overweight have fewer wrinkles? What does obesity do to the skin, and why do people often look older after losing weight than they did before? At what point do extra kilos start to worsen the skin? My name is Monika and I am an aesthetic medicine doctor. I'm holding a calculator because before I can precisely tell you what obesity does to the skin, we need to determine how much excess weight is needed to start worsening the skin. To do this, I'd like you to grab a calculator and do a simple exercise with me. Enter your weight. For me, that will be 65 kilograms, divided by your height in meters. For me, that's 1.65 and then divide again by your height in meters, so 165 divided by 165. What number did you get? For me, it's 23.9. What you just calculated is your BMI. If the number you see on your calculator right now is between 18.5 and 24.9, that's a normal weight. However, if you have 25 or more, this video might be of particular interest to you. And if your BMI is over 30, then it's even more worth watching this video, because in this case we're already talking about obesity, a condition that can also affect the appearance of your skin. BMI is not a perfect indicator. For example, it doesn't work for bodybuilders. And to properly assess your body shape, it's also worth taking other measurements, such as WHR, which is the waist to hip ratio. But for the purposes of this video, BMI is definitely enough for us to answer a very important question. Namely, from what point do excess kilograms really start to affect the quality of your skin? I would like to reassure you and tell you that you would need to have a BMI well over 30 for it to have any effect on your skin, but unfortunately, that wouldn't be true. A study was conducted in which the collagen density and the level of oxidative stress were analyzed in men not with obesity, but with overweight, that is, with a BMI greater than 25 but less than 30. The study results indicated that in these individuals, the amount of collagen in the skin, including the abdomen, thighs, and arms, was lower, and oxidative stress was higher than in the control group of people with normal weight. So, is obesity even something that occurs in Poland? I checked the latest NFZ report and the data shocked me. Why? Because it turned out that currently in Poland, there are more people who are overweight or struggling with obesity than those without overweight or obesity. To be more specific, overweight and obesity affect as many as 56.6% of people over the age of 15. According to estimates by the NCD Risk Factor Collaboration, in Poland in 2025, 25.9% of women and as many as 30.3% of men aged 20 or older will suffer from obesity. Alright, so now we know that this video about the impact of obesity on the skin isn't aimed at a narrow group of people, but at the majority. However, you'll probably be quite surprised when I tell you that more body fat can actually mean fewer wrinkles. If you've ever watched my video about fillers, such as hyaluronic acid, then you know that we inject them when subcutaneous fat tissue decreases. I'll go even further. There's actually an aesthetic medicine procedure called lipotransfer, which literally involves transplanting fat into the face to make it look better. So what does that mean? The more fat you have, the fewer wrinkles. Paradoxically, yes. That means if you have someone in your circle who is about the same age as you but carries more extra weight, there's a good chance they'll have fewer wrinkles. So at this point I should just end the video and say that more fat equals a younger appearance. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I'll tell you what actually happens beneath the surface of that seemingly better looking skin in such people later in the video, and also about Ozempic Face. That is, what happens if someone like that loses weight quickly. But before I get to that, you need to know exactly what excess weight does to your skin. Let's start with something you probably didn't expect. In this study, researchers examined how the visual characteristics of the skin change in people with obesity. In people with obesity, the skin is less hydrated. The skin's protective barrier becomes weakened, causing the skin to lose water more quickly, become dry, and regenerate more poorly. This is related to a disruption in the balance of lipids between the cells of the epidermis. Secondly, the skin may become more reddened, and this isn't just about blushing. This is the result of changes in blood circulation. In obesity, blood vessels react differently, and this is visible on the skin. Thirdly, there is increased skin roughness. The surface of the skin becomes less smooth and feels more uneven to the touch. These changes have various causes. ranging from the effects of the nervous and vascular systems through chronic inflammation in the body to insulin resistance. So obesity affects the skin not only mechanically but also through disorders that occur inside the body. But that's just the beginning. Now we need to talk about oxidative stress. Oxidative stress occurs when there is increased production of free radicals in the body. These free radicals then degrade the collagen fibers in the skin. It turns out, as the previously cited studies show, that being overweight causes increased oxidative stress. However, the truth is that oxidative stress in the body is caused more by UV radiation, smoking, and environmental pollution than by being overweight. Speaking of oxidative stress, a great way to deal with it is by using well-chosen skincare products. Which skincare products? I've compiled as many as 140 recommendations for products with excellent ingredients and in various price ranges in my book, Understanding Cosmetics. There, I share knowledge you won't find on YouTube. This guide will pay for itself on your very first visit to the drugstore, so click the link in the description and check out my book. And now, let's get back to the topic. So, since oxidative stress mostly comes from other sources, you actually don't need to worry about collagen if you're dealing with obesity. It turns out it's actually the opposite, and that's what the next point will be about. A moment ago, I showed you studies that found people who are overweight, but not yet obese, have less collagen, but that was just scratching the surface of something much more serious. In humans, chronic hyperglycemia, that is an excessively and persistently high blood glucose level, causes glycation and the formation of age molecules. To put it simply, sugar in the body sticks to proteins and damages them, and collagen and elastin, which are important for youthful skin, are proteins. Do you remember that study from a few minutes ago? The one showing that even being overweight leads to collagen loss? In that study, it was found that people who were overweight had less densely packed collagen fibers in their skin. What's worse, it turns out that losing weight and returning to a normal BMI do not reverse this process or these damages, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's increasingly being said that hyperglycemia, which often accompanies overweight and obesity, causes what's called a sugar suck, that is, accelerated skin aging with sagging and wrinkles resulting from glycation damage. So a high level of glucose or sugar in the body actually makes us age faster. I talk more about this topic in this video. Save it to watch later. Speaking of skin laxity, since the skin contains a large amount of fat tissue, it might seem like it's firmer and more elastic, right? If that's what you thought, the next point will definitely surprise you. What happens after losing weight? Studies show that expanding subcutaneous fat causes excessive stretching of the skin, which over time leads to its permanent loosening. In other words, the skin becomes less elastic and more prone to deformation. This is especially significant in situations where a person struggling with obesity loses weight. The loss of fat tissue reveals structural skin damage that was already present before. As a result, the looseness and excess of stretched skin become more visible. What exactly do I mean by that? You've probably heard of the so-called Ozempic Face, which refers to the sunken facial appearance and unhealthy look caused by rapid weight loss. We also can't ignore the effects of gravity. Studies have shown that increased fat tissue mass significantly intensifies the effect of gravitational skin sagging, for example in the lower cheek and jawline area, creating so-called jowls. This explains why people who have undergone massive weight loss often look older than they did before losing weight. The loss of fat tissue reveals pre-existing structural damage to the skin, resulting in its looseness and excess. So an obese person who has lost weight may look older than their peer who was never overweight. We can also look at this from another perspective. A large amount of fat tissue does not stop the skin aging process, but it does modify it. In the skin of obese people, aging occurs through different changes instead of fine wrinkles, for example through looseness, thickened features, or dryness. But overall, the appearance may seem prematurely aged. What conclusions can we draw from all this? If now, after watching this video, you think to yourself that you only have a few extra kilos, you're far from having obesity as a disease, and all these skin problems basically don't concern you, then you're both right and wrong at the same time. You might be right because the negative effects on the skin described in this video are more pronounced the further your excess weight deviates from the norm. But you might also be wrong because these effects can be significant and visible even with seemingly harmless overweight and a BMI below 30. Dear ones, obesity is a disease and a very insidious one at that. If you are experiencing this disease, just like with any other illness, seek support from a specialist to resolve the situation more effectively. I realize that worse skin condition is not the worst consequence of this disease, but if even one person, looking at this issue from a different perspective, decided to take action, then it means it was worth preparing this material. That's why I have a sincere and heartfelt request. If you leave me a comment under this video, there's a good chance that YouTube will show it to more people. So if you like this material, please leave me a comment to help its reach. In this material, I talked a lot about glycation and collagen breakdown. I've made a video about this where I explain in an easy to understand way what sugar does to your skin. The thumbnail for that video is now showing on the screen, so be sure to click and watch it. Thank you for today. Kisses. Bye.